Welcome back to Born to Forge. A little while ago someone asked me if we could give a tour of the workshop. So we got a little bit of downtime today, so we thought we'd show you behind the scenes and show you some of the kit that you might not have seen in some of our YouTube videos. So starting off, I've got my metal worker over here. It's a 50 ton, what are we? We're a Kingsland Compact 40? 40? 50? I don't know. It's a Kingsland Compact. It's pretty good, handy bit of kit. It punches holes, crops steel, cuts angle iron, round bar, square bar, all the usual stuff. I could do with a bigger one. Always do with a bigger bit of kit. But it's pretty good. I've been using this for punching out dragon scales and doing all sorts of bits of kit. So it's a handy tool to have in the workshop, especially for the fabrication side of the business. On the wall behind me, I've got the steel rack. That's where we keep most of our black bar for forging and whatnot, ready for chopping up. I've got my 500 amp MIG welder, which we use on a day-to-day basis for doing all our sitting gates together and railings and bits and pieces and fixing bits in the shop. Handy bit of kit. We've also got TIG, arc, gas welding, brazing, all the usual bits and pieces that you probably haven't seen or may have seen before. Over here I have my little ring roller. I use this for making arcs for the tops of gates. Mostly working cold metal, this thing, but it's quite good for making rings and all those other little projects. I've got my horizontal bandsaw. This has got an 18-inch capacity, so it'll cut a pretty big chunk of RSJ up, or some pretty big round bar or pipe. In need of a desperate repair, this one. We've lost a piece of carbide which guides the blade, so that'll be getting fixed in the next few weeks, hopefully. I've got my Wadkin table saw over here, hidden away. Use this for doing some of the woodworking projects that we do, things like the wooden Viking chest and stuff like that. Some of the other little projects that go on behind the scenes. On my left, I've got my nice old radial arm drill. This thing's got a hell of a lot of torque, so I won't use this on smaller jobs. You certainly can't hold something that you've got underneath it and drill like you would on a normal pillar drill. It works in a slightly different way. You set the workpiece up and then move the drill bit to where the workpiece is. It's absolutely brilliant. It'll drive some pretty big drill bits. I think the biggest drill bit I've got personally is like a 50mm diameter drill bit, and that'll just drill all day through some pretty big stuff. For the day-to-day drilling, you'll have seen this in my videos, which is the little pillar drills. I've got 2 of them set up so I don't have to change drill bits every 5 minutes when I'm doing multiples of certain objects and things. Set up a pilot in one and then the finishing hole in the other drill, which is handy. And then in the far corner I've got my old Colchester student. This old lathe is coming to the end of its life, but it's done a good 70 years of work, so it's not doing too badly. I'll replace that at some stage when the budget allows. Over here I've got a vital piece of kit. If you're setting up in blacksmithing, this is one of the first bits of kit that you want. Before you buy a power hammer and spend loads of money on stuff you don't necessarily need, a fly press is just fantastic. We've set this up at the moment to punch out dragon scales, or rather to shape them. And this is a Norton number 6, and it's got 6 tons of force. And this thing will cut bar, bend, hot rivet. It works steel hot, it'll work steel cold, and it will go all day, and there's nothing really to go wrong. This fly press is probably 40 years old, and it's pretty much as good as the day it was bought. You pick these up for an absolute song as well. So keep your eyes peeled for these handy bits of kit. On the other side of me, I've got the powered version. So this is a hydraulic forging press. I've modified this a little bit to help me with hot metal working. And the nice thing about this, it's a little bit faster than the fly press, so it's quite good for forging and doing that hot metal working, whereas the fly press is a little bit slower. But it's a bit different to working on a power hammer. So you've probably seen this in a couple of my videos, but not very many. We'll put it to more use as time allows. So this end of the workshop, this is the forge. Up here I've got 3 double forges, and this is where we do our weekend classes and our day-to-day forging as well. So we've got it laid out so that we can get 6 people in here comfortably. I think I've got 10 anvils in here, all different shapes and sizes, so it's quite handy. Over in the corner, I've got my hot metal working bench. So this is a bit of 2-inch plate. It's called a platen table, or some people call them acorn tables. It's got 144 holes drilled in it, so you can just drop jigs and tooling straight into the top of the bench, clamps and things like anvil dogs and stuff as well, and you can just clamp all your work down, give it a bit of beating. Being 2-inch plate as well, it's not going to distort and change shape when it's got a bit of hot steel on there. So it's a handy bit of kit, bit of a lump to move around. Tends to get in the way a little bit of that though. So we've got some different anvils in here as well. So I'll go back over here. So this is probably one of the smaller anvils I've got in here. This is standard sort of London pattern. Different sort of Pritchells normally at the back end here. But it's got a nice sharp, fine bick. The nice thing about having lots of anvils in the workshop is that I've got lots of choice when I'm coming to doing different jobs throughout the week. So I've got an old anvil here. This one's probably 150 years old. It's got raw iron body and a high carbon steel top to it. That's probably your classic London pattern. Over here I've got sort of a European double bick anvil covered in stuff. The nice thing about this is it's got the tapered bick on the back end, which makes a big difference. So if you're trying to bend up a fire pan or a fire shovel or something, you can get in there and do something like that. Or you can get in there when you're trying to set a pair of tongs or something. So it's quite handy having a different anvil with different shapes. It's not one I use every day. As you can see, it's covered in junk. So hanging up on the walls around the forge, I've got probably over 100 different pairs of tongs. They all hold different stock, everything from wolf jaws to V-bits. Those are your sort of standard sort of tongs, and then all the weird and wonderful tongs as well. So there's pairs up here for holding things like axes, getting in and holding the eye while you forge the blades and things on an axe. All sorts. We'll do a video at some stage just on the different pairs of tongs because there's bloody loads of them. As I say, I think I've got over 100 pairs in the workshop at the moment, and we're always making new ones to do certain different jobs. So you can never have too many pairs of tongs. As I move around the workshop, this is the forge you'll usually see me working on in the videos. This is where I choose to work. I've got the power hammer set up nice and close. I've also got the gas forge nice and close, so I haven't got to dance around the workshop and move big distances with my hot pieces of steel. I can go straight from one forge onto the power hammer, or straight from the other forge onto the power hammer with minimal amount of moving and fussing about. You know, strike where the iron's hot, as the pun goes, and make the most of the heat. On my left over here, I've got the old gas forge. We've had this one now for about 4 years. Well, obviously we built it ourselves. And it's coming to the end of its life. So we are going to be making a new gas furnace in a few weeks' time, hopefully. We had delivery of refractory cement this morning, so we're all tooled up, ready to make the new one. We're hopefully going to go for a ribbon burner as well. Over here, I've got my 40-ton Tannard, 40 kilos, sorry, not 40 ton. It's a good little power hammer. It does most of the jobs that I need it to do. I've forged 2-inch round down on this little hammer quite happily. It certainly saves the elbows, and brilliant bit of kit. I did have a 200 weight onion, but we had to sell that a few years ago. Getting a bit old, that one as well anyway. Over on my right, I've got a bank of lineages, knife grinders, a lot of you would call them. They're great for all the different sort of general fabrication type stuff, as well as grinding knives and putting bevels on axes and stuff like that. And I've got lots of different choice over size of wheels, different shapes of platen, belt thicknesses and things like that. So it's quite handy to have a mix and variety, and be able to go from like that, which is a 20 grit, up to, well, whatever that is on there. It's probably about 300 grit on that one. I wouldn't jump from one to the other, it's too quick. Over here, I've got my little start right vertical bandsaw. It's a really handy piece of kit, this. It's really changed how we cut things in the workshop. So before, we might have used the plasma cutter a lot more, or angle grinder for cutting stuff. These days we can feed it into the vertical bandsaw, and it's absolutely brilliant, especially if you're doing like splits on bars. You're going to make something like, say, a ram's head poker. You can feed the taper into the bandsaw and then get a really nice even split, especially if you're doing a production run. So obviously if you're going to make one, I'd use a hot chisel, but if I'm going to make 50, I use the vertical bandsaw. It's an absolutely brilliant bit of kit. Really does make a big difference to how you operate in the workshop. Dotted throughout the workshop, I've got at least half a dozen leg vices. They're all in strategic places, and they're quite handy bits of kit really. The nice thing about a leg vice is it transfers the energy and the blow into the ground through the leg. And they're all mounted on bits of RSJ, so they're all pretty heavy duty to kit. And as always, any flat surface in the workshop is covered in crap. Mounted on this leg vise, I've got a little bevelly shear. This is a really handy bit of kit for cutting sheet steel and doing nice little curves when you're making smaller pieces of components and stuff. I'll be using this one in my upcoming video when I finish off this dragon sculpture that I've got behind me. I'll be using that for cutting things out like the belly, plates and stuff like that. So you might have seen that in my Norman helmet video that I did a little while ago as well. So it's a really handy piece of kit for cutting out sheet steel. Oxypropane over here for warming up steel, cutting steel, especially the bigger stuff. Really handy if you're going to rivet up a pair of tongs or something, or if you're going to rivet up 20 pairs of tongs and you want to get a really precise little heat in an area. Or you can use a pepper pot, and I've got bigger ones of these for warming up bigger areas, especially if you work on a sculpture and it's just not practical to get it back in a forge. So that's quite handy. I've got my main layout table. So this one's an 8x4 with a piece of 1-inch plate on the top. It's made on top of a series of RSJs and box section, so it's pretty heavy, chunky bench, this one. It's nice and flat and level, so everything that I make on it I know is flat and level, which is really important, especially if you're making furniture or dining table or something. You don't want any rock or anything like that in there, so it's handy. What else have we got in the workshop? So behind me I've got, yet again, another leg vise. As I say, they're dotted throughout the workshop in key places. And it's just handy having them around. Hiding on my right, I've got Norman. You've seen our crash test dummy in some of our videos. He'll be getting beaten up in some upcoming videos when we do some more knives and swords and different bits and pieces that we've got planned as well. And that is pretty much the workshop. So if you enjoyed this tour, you want to see some more of our videos, remember to click like and subscribe and put those notifications on there as well. And we'll see you next time on Born to Forge. Cheers guys.